You know Beenie Man. You know Sim Simma. You know Girls Them Sugar. You know the Grammy. You know the King of Dancehall title. But do you know where all of that came from? Not which studio, not which producer. I mean the ground beneath his feet. I mean the community that made him who he is before any of us ever heard his name. Because Beenie Man is not just a story about talent. He is a story about Jamaica. And most of us have never heard that part. Moses Davis was born on August 22nd, 1973 in the Waterhouse community of Kingston, Jamaica. And before we talk about him, we need to talk about Waterhouse. Because Waterhouse is not just a neighborhood. It is a product of a deliberate political decision. In the 1960s and 1970s, both major political parties in Jamaica constructed public housing schemes in Kingston, Jamaica. And they didn't just build houses. They built loyalty. They selected residents based on who they voted for. They armed communities against each other. They turned neighborhoods into fortresses, into what scholars today call garrison communities. Political tribalism, backed by guns, became the reality of daily life in Kingston. Waterhouse was one of those communities, surrounded by violence that wasn't born in the streets. It was delivered there by people in suits making decisions in air-conditioned offices. That is the world that Moses Davis was born into in 1973. That is the ground beneath the king of dancehall's feet. Now here is where it gets remarkable, because inside of all of that, inside the tension, the scarcity, the uncertainty, a 5-year-old boy started to perform. 5 years old, Moses Davis, the child they called Beenie Man, because of his small frame, was already toasting, already DJing, already standing in front of people and commanding a room. His uncle, Sidney Knowles, who played drums for Jimmy Cliff, saw what was there and pushed him forward. In 1981, when Moses was 8 years old, he entered the Taste the Talent contest, a national competition, a boy from Waterhouse, standing in front of Jamaica, and he won. Radio DJ Barry G heard him, introduced him to the sound system world, and by the time he was 10 years old, he had a debut album, The Invincible Beenie Man, the 10-year-old DJ wonder. Think about that for a moment. In a community shaped by political violence, in a country where inner city children were treated as collateral, a 10-year-old from Waterhouse had a record, had a name, had a voice. But here's what most people didn't know. He stopped. He stepped back from the music to focus on school. A child prodigy who chose school over early fame. Beenie Man came back to music in the early 1990s, and the sound he brought back was not polished. It was not sanitized for export. It was raw, it was sharp, it was spiritual, it was funny, and it was unmistakably Jamaican. Dancehall has always been misunderstood from the outside. Critics see the controversy, the clash, the culture, the energy, but what they miss is what dancehall actually is at its core. Dancehall is the voice of the Jamaican people who were never given a microphone by the institutions that were supposed to serve them. It is political commentary dressed as party music.
Tell me what you really know about that great man, Steve Biko.
It is the pain that refuses to be quiet. It is Waterhouse speaking to the world. By the late 1990s, Beenie Man was the biggest dancehall artist on the planet. Who am I? Girls Them Sugar, king of the dancehall.
Who am I? Just the girl them sugar.
Welcome the king of the dancehall.
In 2001, the Grammy for Best Reggae Album, Janet Jackson, Wyclef Jean, international stages. But I need you to hold two things at the same time. The global king of dancehall and the boy from a community that politicians used as a pawn. A community that was given guns instead of opportunity. A community that systems did not build for success, but produced it anyway. That is not an accident. That is not despite where he came from. That is because where he came from. Waterhouse made Beenie Man, and through Beenie Man, the whole world Heard Waterhouse. This is what Humans of Jamaica is about. Not the awards, not the highlight reel. The ground, the history behind the person, the Jamaica that shaped them, that most of us never learned about in school. Because every Jamaican entertainer who made it to the world stage carries a community on their back, a street, a sound system, a family, a history. Beenie Man is one of the kings of dancehall, but before that, he was the boy from Waterhouse, and that boy deserves to be known. This is Humans of Jamaica, and we're just getting started.
I just still see I send them well, play music feed them.